Hello everyone, today I'll be discussing a serious environmental health issue, dioxin contamination in food and its impact on human health. Through recent research, I've gained a deeper understanding of the ways in which dioxins enter the food chain, the effects of exposure, and the regulatory challenges involved. Dioxins are a group of highly toxic chemical compounds that are persistent in the environment and can accumulate in living organisms. They include substances like polychlorinated biphenyls and polychlorinated dibenzoyl p-dioxins, and are mostly commonly released through industrial activities such as waste, incineration, pesticide manufacturing, and the burning of fossil fuels. Because dioxins are chemically stable and fat soluble, they accumulate in the fatty tissues of animals, particularly in meat, dairy products, fish, and other fatty foods. Once ingested by humans, these compounds can pose significant long-term health risks, including cancer, immune system suppression, reproductive issues, and developmental problems in children. This topic is incredibly important to environmental health because it highlights how environmental pollutants like dioxins can infiltrate our food systems and directly affect human health. What makes dioxins particularly concerning is their persistence. Once released to the environment, dioxins can remain in the soil, water, and air for decades, circulating through the ecosystem and ultimately entering the human food chain. This creates a continual exposure risk even as we attempt to regulate and mitigate emissions. In particular, children are identified as being vulnerable to dioxin exposure due to their high consumption of contaminated food, and developing bodies which are more sensitive to environmental toxins. One of the most interesting findings from the research is that dioxins, despite efforts to reduce emissions, continue to be a significant concern, particularly in developing countries where regulatory frameworks are less powerful. Even in more industrialized regions, dioxins levels remain a threat in food products like fish and dairy, with certain seafood like eels containing dioxin levels that exceed safety. This shows that contamination is widespread and can affect populations worldwide, highlighting the global nature of the problem. What I found most interesting was the connection between diet and dioxin exposure. While dioxins can enter the body through air and water, the most common route of exposure is through the food we eat. The research suggests that a low-fat plant-based diet may help reduce the intake of dioxins as these chemicals are stored in fat. This concept stood out to me because it not only points to a health risk but also offers a solution. Once that involves individuals' choices such as diet modifications in addition to regularly changes, it emphasizes how public awareness and education on the risk associated with dioxin contamination can be key to mitigating exposure on a personal level. This was particularly fascinating because it shows the power of informed consumer decisions. Alongside the need for stronger environmental regulations, one of the challenges that researchers highlighted in the inconsistent regulation of dioxin emissions around the world. While countries in Europe and North America have accomplished stricter laws to reduce dioxin emissions, many developing countries still lack comprehensive regulatory frameworks which increase the risk of exposure in those regions. This uneven enforcement makes it difficult to measure and control contamination levels globally. Global cooperation and stricter enforcement are necessary to prevent dioxins from entering the food chain, causing harm, particularly in regions where people are more vulnerable due to lower food safety standards. In conclusion, dioxin contamination remains a critical issue for both environmental health and public health. The research emphasizes the persistence of these pollutants in our environment and their dangerous effects on human health, particularly in vulnerable populations like children. While industrial regulations are improving, it is clear that more work needs to be done in raising public awareness about the risk of contaminated food. In the end, protecting human health requires a many-sided approach involving stricter environmental regulations, improved monitoring systems, and informing diet choices. Thank you.